Hello Internet. Today we have this OEM Dell or HP 3080, I believe, most likely, that came in for repair after it had been cleaned. So, not exactly sure what happens to the graphics card after people clean them. But he did mention that before he cleaned, it had some sort of liquid metal. And so today is going to be a little bit of a special episode dedicated to the Black Horse Flux. Black Horse Repairs Flux that I bought on eBay. And with shipping, it turned out to be a lot less than Northridge Fix Flux. So I'm going to be reviewing that flux. I've already moved that flux over into the syringe. You can see it looks a lot different than it looks in here. And the reason for that is because I usually, when I buy flux, I just usually, I don't like these syringes that they come with. So I don't know why people buy these syringes. I don't know, maybe it's like some kind of special plunger for these, but a regular syringe costs pennies, and it's a lot more user-friendly. My guess is that the Northridge Fix had figured this out a long time ago, but whoever makes these hasn't. Or he's reusing these, because this thing was sticky, covered with this stuff, and it was kind of hard to push out anyway. Who cares? Don't care. So, the one thing I noticed immediately when I tried to melt whatever was in that syringe so I could pour it into here is that if you look closely, well, not only that it looks different, you can kind of see how it looks different, obviously, because it got heated to a point where it turned into liquid. You can kind of, hopefully you can see this, but there's a clear separation of the two chemicals that are in there, and I have no idea what this clear part here is and what this is, so I'm not sure. Some kind of an additive, I would imagine, that liquefies this, because this was kind of more fluid than anything else, and it would settle to the bottom. As you can see here, I would put my syringe down on the bottom, cooling it down, and all of that would just kind of eventually settle down as it cools. But when it's in its original state, which is, room temperature, it doesn't have that. Though, if you look closely, you can still see it is kind of clear that it is not mixed thoroughly, though. I'm not sure. See, that will potentially cause inconsistent behavior in use, because sometimes you only need a little tiny bit, and what if it happens to be that little tiny bit there? You can compare that to this flux here. Consistent color, yeah, everything is super consistent. This one here, also consistent. This is V5 Steery. That one was V4. This and the good old trusty V2. Yeah, the V2 has a little bit more a visual difference in there. You can kind of see that. Yeah, the V2 it does have a little bit of that. But none of the V3s or any of that have that. So in the Northridge Fix here is perfectly clear. Northridge Fix Flux. And this is Chinese fake Kimbo. See, it says fake Kimbo. 218 or whatever. Perfectly solid color. Nothing doesn't look like it's been mixed up or anything. This is my own mix. I'm trying to mix two different types of flux to see what happens. And the Kimbo 218, that's the real one, not Chinese. And then this one, yeah, this one's fine. There's a little bit of separation at the bottom there as well, but for the most part, it's perfectly clear. So I don't know if that's going to be a problem or not. I would imagine at some point, if I get to the bottom of this, where all of that liquid is just silicone or some kind of oil-based substance, I have no idea, it's just going to stop working. But who cares? We're going to try. Normally, I would heat it up and pour it into syringes like these, but clearly that was a mistake, because this particular flux doesn't seem to like it. And just by holding it down, you can kind of see that that separation is starting to kind of change its shape. Let me move it over here. See how it just kind of starts to float. I don't know if you can register that. See that line there? So it's kind of running and all over. So it's live. Yeah, so if I put it here, it'll slowly make its way down, which is kind of weird. But whatever. I'm not sure what that composition is, but it seems like whatever two chemicals are in there, they do not like to be mixed, or they do not like to be heated, and they prefer to stay in their original room temperature. Let's power this thing on. No, actually, let's take it apart, because I want to see if there's any liquid metal under the core. And the easiest way to see that will be to take it apart and kind of look. Alright, let's have a look under a microscope. See if we can spot any kind of sign of liquid metal. I don't see anything here. That's just that could be just a thermal paste. People say cleaning. What do they mean? Oh, somebody's calling. Some scammers and spammers. Anyway, who cares? I don't see any short, so well, I forgot to check the 12 volt here. That's kind of important some days. So we're good here. At 3.3. We'll check the data line just in case. Who knows? This one's okay. This one seems okay. This one here. 1 and 2. Seems okay. Clock. And this one here. I think it's okay. I don't know. Let's power this thing on. See what it does. My guess is we're going to have some voltages, but most likely some issues with memory related errors, which will force us to reball the core at the very least, which is good, because we're going to get to use that super new Mega Flux that was very affordable, and hopefully it's good. Yes, let's power this thing on. So 1.6 amp, 1.7. Let's see if we have PEX. Sometimes PEX is missing, and you don't even notice because it's not pulling a whole lot of power. Yeah, we got PEX.
We got PEX.
And the memory. Okay. All right. So let's see. Yep, the thing is not posting. So I'm gonna take that out, plug that in there, and see if we can run some memory test. It's most likely liquid metal that creeped itself in while somebody was trying to clean this thing up. So if you got liquid metal on your GPU, cleaning it up is a very challenging process. You must not allow it to creep anywhere under no circumstances. And if you see it starting to creep somewhere, take out the vacuum and just suck that thing out. I mean, there's no safer way. Seriously, suck it out with a vacuum. Okay, what do we have? Oh yeah, it's the very last, well, not the very last, it's the last to the last chip. See, if it would have been this chip, I would think, well, we need to reball the core, or, you know, because there's like a broken solder joint or something. But it's this chip. So no way this chip has died. I've almost never seen a Micron memory chip that's dead. It happens, but very rarely. A lot of times it's just a broken solder connection. Because Micron is built much, much, much better than Samsung. If you ask me, a lot of times Samsung don't even survive if you fart on it. But if you fart on Micron, it will survive. And it'll probably fart back at you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go take a quick look around that particular chip and kind of wonder, what if we have an issue with like a solder joint on any of them resistors that are nearby? And that would be it. But I don't think so. I think all this is just a bunch or a little liquid moly or whatever. No, that's oil. Liquid metal that got under, and we just can't see it. Take the core out. take out that chip and see how well that flux will do. Allow me to explain why I have several fluxes and how I use them. So the V2, I really like V2. This is stereo V2. This is old stereo flux. I like it because for leaded solder that I use all the time, for reballing, you know, whatever, this flux starts to boil right before, not during, but right before it's time, right before the melting point of the leaded solder. And so what that tells me is that once I start see boiling action, I know that the chip is just about to get soldered. Just need a little bit more heat, and that will be it. It will not boil while you're actually soldering the chip or while the solder balls are actually melted. So there's no risk of those balls to kind of move around as the boiling action takes place in between. With what I've seen with Northridge fixed flux, however, is that it would boil so much earlier into the heating process, almost 1/4 way into the boiling, into the soldering process. So let's say you need 200 degrees to melt solder. It will start boiling at, you know, like 50 or maybe 100, which is way too early. And so when it boils, it obviously evaporates. So it's kind of tricky to use, but with this thing, it boils right before it starts to melt. That's what I want to see here. That's what I want to see with this Black Horse repair flux. That's funny. It's always doesn't. I don't know where that separated liquid went. And we got a bubble here. That's okay. So I want to see how it behaves in terms of removal, because for removal, I like to use this cheap Chinese Kingbo. This stuff, this white stuff, and the reason for that is, so I would soak the chip with this flux, and I lift the chip, and you got to think about it. The chip is has a lead-free solder balls on there, and so it needs a lot more heat than the leaded solder balls, right? This flux actually stays more or less liquid to a point where I have enough time to clean up all of the remaining solder, mix it up with leaded, wick it, you know, and then use Q-tips to wipe off the board, and it will be nice, clean, and dry, almost, you know, no flux left over. If I were to use Northridge fixed flux, I remove the chip and do the same thing. I remove the chip, I would mix everything with leaded solder, wick it, and then I start wiping it off. I can't wipe anything off because it would solidify and it would become so hard that I would not be able to wipe anything off, even with the board being well over, you know, or at the very least at 100 degrees at that point. And so the solution, the V2 would behave kind of similar. It would turn hard after it's been used at about the same temperature. But the thing is that if I were to add a little bit more of that same flux to that already existing one that kind of cooled and hardened, it would dilute it, and I would be able to clean it off with itself. So by adding more flux, I would be able to dilute whatever hardened on the board and clean it up and clean up the area. With Northridge fixed flux, I can't do that because it's so hard. It doesn't even mix with itself. Even if you start cranking up the heat on the board, it would still not work. That's why I don't like his flux from any angle you look at it. Micro, soldering, chip removal, reball, nothing. Well, and for the reball, I don't know if you've seen my video where it kind of helped me with reballing the chip with a couple of memory chips, and it did a great job. And the reason why it did a great job is because solder balls were positioned almost perfectly, and the flux was kind of thick, so the balls wouldn't shift. I can achieve the exact same effect with this cheap Chinese king bow. As a matter of fact, I do use this for that particular reason as well, on smaller chips with a higher density solder pads. But I thought that maybe Northridge Fix would help me with that. It kind of did and it kind of didn't. Whatever. The issue with that is I would have to flood the chip while it's still hot in order for the solder balls to kind of center themselves on the pads. The flux itself is kind of thick, and you cannot really apply it enough so that the solder balls would center themselves. Because if you do apply enough for them to do that, that would be too much, and the solder balls are going to start sticking to each other, thus defeating the whole purpose of, you know, the very properties that I've been looking for in pretty much any flux I tried so far. So, too much talk. Let's go ahead and apply this thing here. See how well it flows. I already have a very thick needle here, probably the thickest needle, and the thing is that might be a problem here is that if there's flux under that chip already, then I can't really say that this is going to be a very fair test, because if there's enough flux under that core, then we're kind of mixing it up with whatever's under there. But we'll see. So this flux, it's kind of oily, you know. It's not like anything else. It looks like it behaves oily. I haven't seen flux that does this. I don't know how to explain it. Okay, so here's what we're looking at so far. Let me go switch over on the microscope. This is already interesting. You see all that bubbling? Yeah, that's a little bit too soon for my liking. So it bubbles very soon. So that could be a problem. And the board is just over 100 degrees. Yeah, and I think we got a ton of flux under that chip, under the core. So let's put some. Yeah, look at this. So it's not flowing very well on the hot board. Let's compare that to, let's say, good old V2. And I'm going to ultrasonic this thing out anyway at the end. So here's V2. See this? It just seeps right under the chip. And that is exactly what you want to do. I'm gonna do some adjustments here. Hold on a sec. Okay, a little bit brighter here. And this is the newest Stereo V5. I absolutely hate this thing. It's clear, it's very liquid, as you can see, and you would think it'd be good, but this thing is like sugar syrup. It's worse than the NF.Flux. It will turn hard, but it would smell nice. And that's really all there is to it. Okay, let's see. Maybe we can apply. A V3 is much like V2 and V4. They're very similar. V4 is thinner, and V5 is the thinnest of them all. But even this, see how it just kind of flows under the chip? That's what you want to see, to some degree. So let's take fake Kimbo next. See how that flows. See how thick it is? But as soon as it touches the board, it flows. It's not boiling, and it flows under the chip, filling the entire void in there, and that's great. And my good old UHF or UV something, I forgot what it is. The one I use for micro soldering. Same thing. It's like liquid, goes under. Perfect. But whatever. We are testing the all new black horse. I still see a little bit of bubbling here, but I don't know what the origin of that is. It could be... Look at all that bubbling. It's terrible. Makes me wonder, once all that bubbling stops. Yeah, it bubbles, but it stops. So whatever's in there will eventually work itself out and stop. So who knows? And the smell is definitely there. It smells like a petroleum-based type of thing. Hard to say. But the guy claims it's all natural, you know, made on a farm, organic materials, all that stuff. Which, you know, I don't have reasons not to believe that. It's local. You know, there are a lot less liars here in the US than there are in China. So I would not be surprised that it's made from beeswax. Who knows? But I do want to get that chip out here. Maybe I don't. It's kind of funny. I have so much flux in here. I don't know what smells, what doesn't. it's like a mixed aroma in here. Smells good. Okay, let's bring in the heat. See if we can get this chip loose. Yeah, very unfortunately, we already had something under that core, so I can't really say 100% that. Can't really test this flux 100%, basically is what I'm saying, because it's contaminated with whatever's under there. But doesn't matter. That just makes this test even more challenging, because sometimes I have to deal with all sorts of cards that come in all sorts of conditions. Some are worse than others, and some have already been reflown with some garbage flux, and I have to, usually I resort to the Chinese Kimbo to redo all their work. And I must say I am very happy with that Chinese fake flux, more so than with anything else I tried so far, with the exception of micro soldering. I cannot pull this thing out because it got stuck, and so it was difficult to remove the core. But like I said, I don't know what's under here. There's definitely something. As you can see, if you look close enough, there's something under there, some kind of a cleaning thing that the person tried, and I'm a bit scared as to what would I see under the core. It's about the same under the core. Doesn't look much better. Whatever this is, it was preventing the solder from flowing, the flux. So let's apply some of that flux. I wonder, let's see if we apply the same flux, but the one that that has not been heated prior. See what that does. It's doing the same thing. Yeah. Yeah, same thing. Who cares? But we'll see. We will see what it does. And it might actually be okay. Who knows? So let's start doing the edges first. And makes me wonder if I should have removed this chip. You know what? As a matter of fact, let's go and do that. Because I don't immediately see any reason for thinking that there's liquid metal anywhere in here. So there's a lot of smoke coming out right now. All that stuff is smoking. I don't know if you can see this, but there's like a little bubble here that's separated. It's chemically separated. See this? This area here. It's like a liquid within liquid that didn't get mixed in. Whatever this is, that's what I was talking about. That I've seen at the bottom of the syringe. They got separated. What that is, I have no idea. That makes me wonder if there would be any issues with consistency of process. There we go. Alright, now let's see if we can wick all that solder off, and then I want to see if I can clean all that up after we wick it, so that way we can tell whether or not the flux will turn rock hard. Hopefully not, so we'll be able to actually wipe the board without needing to add any flux or without needing to heat it up any more than it already is. But I gotta say that it feels very smooth. It feels like it just slides over the board like butter. That's probably explains why it looked like some kind of oil. So it feels like it's lubricating the whole thing. I mean, that's what Flux does anyway, but this particular one, it just feels so smooth. That's very interesting. Definitely interesting, yeah. My guess is we're not gonna have any problems wiping it off, but who knows, we'll see. Let's see how that works. Okay, that was easy. Yeah, it wipes off nicely. Yeah, it does. Well, granted we had a little bit extra here, but whatever. I'm not gonna give it too much credit, but it wipes off. It wipes off nicely, yeah. Struggles a little bit here in the top where we had least amount of it. But if we add, can we dilute it to make it easier by adding more? Yeah, look at that. We add more if we need to, and it dilutes whatever was on there. So that's also good. That means that even if you did leave the board out for long enough for the flux to cool down, you can still warm it up, add a little bit more, and wipe it off. Okay, so far so good. It starts to drag a little bit. It's definitely on the thick side, a little bit on the thicker side, but we can add some more. See what that does. This thing is so cheap, I don't even feel bad adding more. So, but the Northridge fix was so expensive that adding more just felt wrong. It's kind of funny. It's got some kind of a smell, almost like something like a tree sap sort of. It smells like something natural, pleasant to some degree. A little bit of soury, something that kind of reminds you of a forest or whatever. Let's look at the mess with this chip. What do we have? So the chip, oh boy, look at that. That's a lot of damage here. I don't know if it's shorted or not. I don't know if we have liquid damage here. I mean the liquid metal. It does not look like it's liquid metal. Let's add some of that stuff in here. I usually don't, but this time I kind of didn't add enough because the edges of the core were blocking the flux to go under. That's why the entire surface didn't get coated like it usually does. And also that's why it was a little bit difficult to remove the core. Just many things went wrong here, basically, is what I'm trying to say. But it's good. The more things that go wrong, the more challenging the test is. And so we're going to be able to test this flux probably in the worst way possible. Yeah, very interesting. This flux, the way it behaves is very strange. But it doesn't bother me. With the exception of that boiling action. You want the flux to be in one place, but it boils and it starts to expand, and it just goes everywhere where you didn't intend to. When you apply it on the hot board, but if you start on a cool board, it's not gonna help you because it won't flow anywhere. No idea why it does that, and kind of makes me wonder, what if I were to separate whatever stuff was in there, just kind of let it settle, or let it settle to the bottom by holding the syringe down, and if removing that element from the mix would make it stop boiling, I might have to do some experiments here. Since it's so easy to separate the two, I might as well just give it a go and see what happens. But so far I don't see any significant darkening. I am kind of burning it up here a little bit. We're kind of torturing this flux right now. Now the other good thing about this particular flux is, and I'm expecting that, given how butter smooth it was clearing the top of the board, is that some cards will have thermal paste under the core, and when that happens, when you remove all that solder, it feels like you're scraping the surface of the bottom of the chip. It feels like there's sand in there or something, and this actually has to be the case because that's what we have here, but I don't feel it. It feels like this flux, giving its oily-like behavior that I've seen earlier, lubricates that, and it will minimize the scuffing damage of the chip, which is very noticeable, especially on the memory chips. That could cause issues, but not so much on the core. At least not on the NVIDIA cores. On the AMDs, yeah, their cores are junk. You can scrape their core very easily, get it damaged, and I've even seen pads on the core get ripped off on a 7900 chips. Yeah, look at this. It just flows like water. It's interesting. But then it seems like it's kind of separated. It looks like there's several elements of this flux that are separated. Why they don't mix together, I don't know. Most likely because they are not synthetic, and they just don't mix well with each other. I don't know. So it might be true that it's all natural after all. Who knows? But the wicking is so smooth. Considering how contaminated this thing was, it just feels smooth. Even with all that dirt on there. It's actually working very well. So it looks like the Black Horse knows what they're doing. More so than the Northridge fix. My only hope is that it's gonna work for a reball as well. Though it could present problems because of its early low boiling point, but that's just the initial phase. Though as it heats up, it breaks down two different, there are at least two different elements, and when that happens, can you really guarantee that I will have a good usable chemical composition across the entire chip as I am soldering it down? I don't know. If I can't visually see consistency, and instead what I'm seeing is inconsistency, at least visual, I cannot guarantee that I'm going to get a consistent chemical reactions across every single pad, and that's exactly what I want. If I see chemical separation as it heats, then I'm assuming it's going to be a problem. So even with that boiling action, it still performed better than Northridge fixed flux. And I'm sure he's not gonna like that. I'm sure his whole point of arguing would be, oh look, it boiled. Mine doesn't boil nearly as soon as this one. Therefore, my flux is so much better. I'm sure it is. Who cares? I just work here. Now the ultimate test would be for me to reball this core with this flux. So let's see how well it would work. How easy it would apply. It applies very easy. The chip is a little bit warm though. Oh no, okay. So that's kind of odd. So what happened, I know you can't see this, but it's thick. It's like it's solidified. I don't know why. I can't even move my finger across because it gets stuck. And but it's still kind of smooth at the same time. It's almost like honey. I don't know how to explain this. It's kind of funny. Why would it do that? And it only did it because the chip was still warm a little. Or it evaporated just because it got exposed to air. You know how you try to paint something and you didn't let the paint cure? And I'm talking brush painting, and then you start painting over, and then the paint that's under there that didn't dry completely just kind of starts to go all over the place and just starts to crinkle, wrinkle, and you know, that's basically what I'm getting here. It feels like the first layer that I started applying, it kind of dried almost instantly without giving me any chance of applying a second one. Well, not that I needed to apply a second one. It didn't give me any chance of spreading it across the chip in the first place. Very interesting. So, but that may have something to do with the fact that the syringe that I'm using already has the content of that syringe has already gone through a heat cycle. If you remember, I had to heat this thing up. Or we might have that one particular part of the chemical composition that's at the very bottom of the syringe, and that's probably what's coming out of there, that's behaving like this. I have no idea. Either way, it's kind of hard to get rid of it. It's stuck on my fingers everywhere. Yeah. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to use whatever's in the syringe. Like this. So that way, well, that just makes it hard to apply because it's thick. So I have no choice but to heat up the chip a little bit to soften up, and it's doing the exact same thing. Yeah, it's just I cannot apply this on a chip. As soon as it exited the syringe, it got hard. Yeah. So I cannot do any kind of, well, I'm going to continue on and force it. But then when I do this, I'm thickening the layer of that stuff to a point where it's too much. I'm sure it's going to be too much. And if I start applying any heat, it's going to boil and it's going to create all sorts of problems. But it's super tacky. But you know what? I don't care. I'm going to give it a try anyway, so that we all know exactly what to expect. So let's throw some balls in here. It's super thick. And it doesn't seem to matter. You applying a heat, you're making it worse. You would think that you apply heat and it'll soften up and you'll be able to apply, spread it out evenly on the chip. But it's actually the other way around. You apply any kind of heat, it'll evaporate faster, and it doesn't want to stick in some of the holes here. It became so hard I have to force it into those pads. Let's see if that works. No, some of the pads are just dry. I could not get them properly applied, so we're probably going to do them manually. Yeah, I'm expecting a complete disaster with this reball, but I don't know. It will be magic if it'll actually go somewhere. Who knows? So let's put that here. I mean, this looks terrible. Let me switch over to a microscope. You'll see what I mean. It just looks worse than anything I've seen. Look at this. See, I could not get this thing to apply evenly, and I'm guessing it's all gonna shift like crazy. Yeah, it got too thick in some areas, and yeah, there you go. See, it's, yeah, I don't even touch anything. Look how many balls are bridging. Yeah, we're done here. I'll turn that off before I heat it any further. That's so sad. I was really hoping for a positive outcome of this flux. Oh, I am genuinely sad. We're not even 100 degrees and this thing is already done. Yeah. All these balls. Look at all these balls. There's so many of them. And they're all gonna go to trash. Though I could reuse them. Just clean them, you know, whatever. But it's okay. I'm not gonna cry about it. I'll cry about it next time. Or when you're not watching. It behaves nothing like any flux I've seen before. Okay, so let's do some micro soldering tests. This is the board that I used to test Northridge fixed flux. You can see those wires that we soldered last time. So let's get rid of that solder, whatever's on there. We're gonna remove these wires. We're gonna resolder them again and see how successful would that be. Though, first thing I want to do to make this test fair is to heat up the board, because that's usually how I do this. The board is usually hot during that process. That just makes things flow a lot easier. So this is a MSI 4080, or what's left of it. Alright, the board is now hot. Let's go under a microscope and drop that flux there, see what it does. And you can see it starts to boil. Let's focus here a little bit, right there. And we're gonna take soldering iron and start poking around and see what happens. And I do see it starts to turn dark, as you can see here. That's kind of normal, you know, you expect that to some degree. But if it turns dark and it's still soft or liquid, and it still allows me to do whatever it is that I need to do, and if it clears out, if I add more, which is the case with my old flux that I use for micro soldering, then I could probably live with that. But the problem is, what I'm seeing is that the soldering tip becomes contaminated. So while the flux itself is behaving very well, It has good surface tension. It allows me to solder a wire relatively easy. It contaminates the tip, and what that does is it prevents the solder from sticking to the tip, and so I basically cannot do anything. It's not the biggest problem in the world, I suppose. Okay, so this is how it's, see, this is what it looks like when it's cooled down a little bit. It turns into this, but I don't think, it's not too bad. We can, it gets worse with every second though. It makes visibility a little bit challenging, but not too bad. Once you introduce more heat, it becomes clear again. But it's still, yeah, it's still a little bit too thick, thicker than I wanted it to, but it's not too bad, not too good either. I'd say it's not the best flux for micro soldering. Let's go ahead and wipe this off, see how easy we can clean the working area, because that's just as important. So we're gonna introduce a little bit of heat to soften it up, as I normally do. I absolutely like the smell. It just reminds me of the forest from which we all came, and the caves in which we were all conceived. Let's see how well, oh, that just cleans super easy. Yeah, another thing about this flux, it looks like it's cleaned very easily with alcohol, just like Northridge Fix. His flux is cleaned with alcohol super easy. Just like this one. Just one wipe. Look. One wipe and you're done. And I am ready to start applying solder mask. So, if anything, this looks even better than Northridge Fix. So it cleans very well. So my guess, based on what I've seen so far with this flux, is that it is not for micro soldering. I mean, it could be used for micro soldering, as you've seen here, and it seems like it's doing a half decent job, though it does tend to solidify a little bit sooner than I would want it to. It is absolute disaster for reball, and but it's good for, it seems like it's good for general soldering because of how oily it was during the cleaning of the pads on the board, how it lubricated the board, minimizing any kind of scratching damage to the board. That was beautiful. I mean, it was so smooth. I was actually amazed. I would think that with the MOSFET, it would be just as good as anything. So, I mean, I could probably try, but it's just going to be a waste of time. Doesn't matter. I think this thing is more for a general type of use, soldering. Maybe, you know, you can use it to remove the cores and whatnot, to do basically like all sorts of dirty work. But I would not recommend this for any BGA because of the low boiling point and the way it behaves when you apply it on the BGA chip to begin with, how it sticks to it and then becomes hard instantly. That's a big no-no. Absolutely unusable for applying it on the BGA chip. So alternatively, this cheap Chinese fake king bow will be much better choice, if not the best choice for the BGA chips, though like I said, if you apply just the right amount of this stuff, the balls will start to stick together. So you're kind of forced to apply not enough of it, but just enough to keep the balls attached to the board, and then once everything's hot, then you flood the chip so that the balls will center themselves. Alternatively, I'm using this. This is a Styri Flux VH UTH or something like that. I have that on my Discord somewhere. That will not require any type of flooding, and once the reball is done, the chip looks nice, clean and dry, ready to go. So that's why I use this a lot for reballs. It allows me to, basically it gives me a chip that's ready to be put in a bag without needing to clean it or anything. So if I were to flood the chip, obviously I would have to clean it with ultrasonic. That's additional time and money spent for no good reason. But there's always good in one product and in the other, but ultimately I'm struggling to find one flux that does it all. For micro soldering, I would have to stick with this, but I also use the good old V2 for actually soldering the chip onto the board. So 3 of my favorite flux: Styri V2, Chinese fake Kimbo, and the Styri UTF VHF 00G, who knows what his name is. It's weird. So let's go ahead and get this chip prepped, and this one soldered back on the board using the V2, and we're going to be reballing it with probably this to save myself some brain cells. And yeah, and as far as this black horse thing goes, so let's continue with the reball, and hopefully we'll fix this thing tonight. Alright, we are back. Cleaned up the board, almost good as new. Still a little bit of that mom's nail polish. It looks better than it was when I got it, that's for sure. And here we go. Not a happy beep. Okay, so looks like we still have some errors. So let's see, what do we got? So yep, completely different chip, and the other chip is fine. So it's a completely different chip that we need to reball most likely. So that's gonna be B1. Okay, this guy here. So let's go ahead and reball this chip real quick and see if that helps. Okay, so here's what I'm doing. See how I was able to how it separated one part of that flux from another? So right now, what I have at the bottom of this wrench and what's coming out of the needle is just that one part that's separated from the rest. And so what I ended up doing is I applied it here, and whatever this thing is, it does not harden like it did before. So whatever's left inside of this wrench is what will harden, but it also does not stick to the surface very well. It kind of clumped in little tiny pieces, in bits and little tiny spots. But how will that work once we try to apply some hot air on it? That's what I want to know. Let's see what happens when we start blowing air on this thing. Okay, so the balls are getting attached, but there's not enough liquid. There's not enough surface tension in that thin liquid that would allow them to center. You can see here they do not want to center. So we're gonna have to flood the chip with something like this Chinese fake Kimbo. And that's what I was talking about earlier, the need to flood the chip. The Kimbo that I'm using right now will have very similar effect. The flux, but in that case the flux is very thick, so it'll have very similar effect. And see, now all the balls are falling into their place, and that's basically why I don't like using Kimbo for reball. Okay, so now what I want to know is, let's pour some of that clear stuff from that syringe, that clear liquidy There's a little bit of, it still got mixed in with something. Let me go ahead and remove the lens so we can see it in a very great detail. I just want that clear stuff, nothing else. No other contaminants, like this one here. Actually, let me get this out. I think that's it. So that was the part of the syringe that's synced to the bottom. So I'm gonna go squeeze out. I'm going to squeeze out. I'm just gonna add a little bit more. I'm going to squeeze out all that clear stuff into the trash can until I start getting just the yellow stuff. So now, let me see. Now you can see my syringe is completely filled with yellow. There's no more clear stuff in there. So now let's pour some of that yellow right here. And you can almost see, you can immediately see it's thicker. And that's the one that looks like it's got oil in it or something. So let's try to burn one and the other. See how they behave. Wait for this tip to warm up. Look at that boiling action. It boils so much it shoots all over the place. So I'm guessing that's the part of the flux that's responsible for all of that boiling stuff. Yeah, whatever. Now let's clean the tip and do the same thing for this thing. See how that works. One's boiling too, but it stops, and now this is where it starts to do its magic. There. Nowhere near as violent, yeah. So this is the part, this is the actual flux right here. This, some sort of an additive, I don't know what this is. I honestly think it's not needed to be there. So maybe stop adding it. If it's separating from the rest of the composition in room temperature, why bother? I could say that this flux cleans as easy as Northridge Fix, and Northridge Fix flux was the easiest to clean with alcohol, and I'm talking about after it had been used. If I weren't talking, I'd fix this in probably an hour or two, but it's like 4 hours already. Just because I have to talk about that flux. That's why I don't do product reviews a whole lot, because they take a lot of time and they are distracting. So now we're still not posting. The chances of that chip dying from the reball is very, very low. So I would suspect that the least. Okay, so far what I've done was reflow. The reflow didn't work. I tried to remove the chip, check the pads. That didn't seem to help because the pads were reading okay. So my guess is bad chip somehow, which is not normal, but you know, it does happen once in a while. Today was that special day when it decided to just die on you for no reason. And let's see if that helps. If that doesn't help, then we still definitely do have a problem under the core. But like I said, the pads checked out, and the thing is still not posting. So yeah, it would be funny if it's actually one of them resistors that went bad. So we can check those resistors too. Could be a bad resistor. It's likely. See, now I got errors on two completely different memory chips. And this is the beauty of paste getting under the chip, as well as, well, it's the funny thing is, we replaced the chip, the errors are gone, but now we got errors here and there. Two completely irrelevant chips located in absolutely miles away from each other. Wait, no, these two. So these two. So now we got errors. Wait a minute. No. Yes. No. Yes. No. Yes. No. Yes. Okay, so we had error here. Now error is here and here. So we have errors on the chips that are here. How? Why? So do I just reball the whole card? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and reball these two chips. I'm guessing that stuff is under the chips too and needs to be cleared out. Otherwise, I'm just starting to lose my mind here with these reballs. You think it's gonna be easy, and it's just end up on some 3080 and 12:30 in the morning already, and hopefully I'll get this done before 4 o'clock so I can get some sleep. Actually, no, it's B0, C0, so A1, A0, B1, B0, C1, C0. So these two, yeah, and these two have, you would think maybe something got in the corner, but I doubt that. So it's gotta be the chips. They just went bad for whatever reason. Either the chips are died with the reball. Sometimes, like I said, rarely it happens, but I've seen several chips die with the reball. For whatever reason, they just can't handle the heat. And so it could have happened this time as well, but I don't know. I'm going to reball them first, and if that does not help, then I'll replace them. Okay, looks like I made a mistake again. So we needed to reball A, B, this chip and this chip, but I ended up reballing C1, C0 instead of B0 and C0. So I reball these, I'm gonna solder them down and reball this guy instead. But my guess is they needed to be reballed either way because you've seen what's under them, and I'm kind of surprised that none of these chips here, especially this one, gave us any trouble. If this thing doesn't work, I'm gonna lose my mind, and once I do, I'm gonna have to continue on working on this until 4 o'clock in the morning, until I'm completely lose my mind, because right now I'm only lost my mind halfway, because it's almost 1:30 in the morning. So hopefully this thing posts, because if it does, I still have a lot to do with the heatsink, because the heatsink is a mess, and it does not post. Okay, yeah, so the same chips are still reporting errors after reball. So B0 and C0. So chips are dead. So let's get that done. Goodbye.